Welcome to Unlocking Moves, where we're going to cover the key decision points and pivotal moments that really change the trajectory of successful entrepreneurs and leaders. We want to share stories, not just the glory stories, but also the gory stories. Because as I like to say, the bigger the shit show, the bigger the lesson. So speaking of unlocking moves, my guest today has a lot of them that we're going to get into in just a few minutes. But Tori, I want to start with a hard-hitting question, and I'll give you a little background. It's a two-part question. First, in 2019, you founded Drink Light, which is a health and hydration solution for hangovers. And second, when you were 16, you were the dancing banana for Jamba Juice. I got to ask, what are some crazy hangover stories that you have? And was being the dancing banana one of the reasons why you had some hangovers?
Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't think you were going that direction. I thought you were going to ask which one I liked better. And it's always going to be the dancing banana. I don't think I'll ever have a job that tops that one. No. Okay. Best hangover story. Well, when I was in high school, I worked for Jamba Juice, among other things. And I had lots of energy, loved being outside with my friends. And so that was really fun, but I didn't really start drinking until I got into college. My best hangover story, I've got quite a few, but I think one of them is actually probably the one that when I came up with the idea for Drink Light, which was my career was I had been doing personal startup consulting, but I had been moonlighting businesses also all the time. And I got to a point at the end of 2018 where the project that I was moonlighting wasn't working. And I decided with my business partner and the other people I was working with, I just said, you guys, we just won't be able to get the money for the MVP for this. So we just got to cut it off. We just got to cut our losses and walk away from this project. And at that moment, I kind of thought to myself, I'm never probably going to have my own business. I'm never going to be what I thought I was going to be, like that CEO. And I'm probably just going to be consulting the rest of my life. And that night I had some college friends visit, and they, I wasn't a big drinker, but of course we went out and drank, and they were like, hey, you need to make sure you go and get the Pedialyte before we go out. And I was like, the Pedialyte, ew, that stuff is like full of nasty chemicals. Like there has to be a better solution. And at the time, even Liquid IV had a lot of extra sugar. And so that's when I came up with the idea of Drink Light. It was the night that I had quit another entrepreneurial endeavor, went out drinking with friends and bought Pedialyte, had to go to the baby aisle to get this, anti-hangover kind of solution, where I was like, I just want to be able to have this at the bar. I want to be able to not have to go to Target to the baby aisle to get something like this. I wanted a can. And so that was kind of like my hangover that led to, well, you know what? I actually think I can afford to get an MVP for something like this because it's really simple. And that's how Drink Light started, was actually, going out and prepping for a hangover.
I love it. I love it. I want to get into that story and how you became an entrepreneur from a Hangover-Cure. And that's just a great microcosm of how many entrepreneurial stories are started. So as you can tell today, my guest is Tori Brodsky, who is the founder of Drink Light. And now she's the CEO of Besa Vino, which I think translates to stay the heck off my wine. Don't drink my wine. So Tori, thank you so much. And welcome to the show, Unlocking Moves.
Absolutely, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
If you're just joining us on Unlocking Moves, today's episode is brought to you as usual by HireBetter, the strategic talent partner for growth-minded entrepreneurs everywhere. So Tori, you've got a great story starting as being an entrepreneur as a little girl with a babysitting service that you started. We already mentioned you were the dancing banana at Jamba Juice. You went to Cal Berkeley, went to Cornell. You're a founder, you're a CEO. Tell us a little bit about some of the big surprises that you've had along your amazing journey.
There's been quite a few. I think some of the surprises that weren't really surprises, but rather things that I was told to expect, but it was kind of like I understood, but I didn't get them until I experienced them, which was, as an entrepreneur, everything takes longer and costs more than you think it's going to. And that ended up being true basically in every situation I've been in as an entrepreneur.
You said that no matter whether you've heard it before, you still have to learn it yourself. Do you think the same thing goes for stories about other people's successes and challenges? And spoiler alert, I hope that people can learn from the stories of you that are listening to this show. So is it just your own experience, or do you think you can learn from other people's stories?
I think you can absolutely learn from other people's stories. I think they become part of your toolbox, but I still think that you have to really listen to your intuition, and your own logic and your own direction. And sometimes, other entrepreneurs' experiences can be just good for that toolbox, but not necessarily your guiding light. You have to be your own guiding light. But sometimes you have to kind of reference back to the stories that you've been told, and maybe even go talk to the entrepreneurs who, told you that lesson or advice, before you kind of move forward in your own direction.
I love it. I liken that to the advice you might get from a mentor or a coach or a friend. You got 20 different people giving you advice. What a lot of entrepreneurs do is we ping pong back and forth to all their advice. Your job as an entrepreneur is to try to distill all that advice into what you would do or what you will do for that decision you need to make. Is that appropriate?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people also, like in my specific area of expertise in beverage, will tell you what to expect. Like, you are going to have XYZ problems. And you kind of shrug it off at the time. And then it's not really until you actually physically experience those problems where you go back and you go, okay, now I see what you're talking about. And so everything also, in addition to it being, advice as part of your toolbox, it kind of binds, you with your mentors and your advisors when you actually go through those experiences that they tell you to expect.
It's kind of like when you have kids and you give them advice, don't touch the stove. It's only when they touch the stove that they realize they're not supposed to touch the stove, right?
Exactly.
Hey, let's switch gears for a minute. I want to talk about wine, and you can confirm or deny that Besa mi Vino means don't touch my wine. But you sent me, well, first of all, talk a little bit about your wine. Then I want to show this amazing box that you sent me.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the CEO of Besa mi Vino. This is one of our wines. We have 3. This is our rosé. It is an organic canned wine from Paso Robles, California. And it is delicious, I'll say that, but it actually directly translates in Spanish to kiss my wine. So the reason for that is because it was created, and we can go into the origin story of the company in a little bit, but it was created because the founders really wanted to create one of the first clean canned wines, something that was made sustainably, made with organic grapes, and suitable for people who have sensitivities to things like sulfites and added sugars in wines. And so that's why they created it. And there's actually even a funnier story behind the name if you want to go into that.
Hey, if it's funny, let's go.
So the real story behind the name was actually that the 2 founders are 2 brothers from Los Angeles. And the original name was not Besa mi Vino, it was something else. And they had already incorporated the company. They'd started making the wine. They had gone to a trade show, and at the trade show, the founder got a phone call from a lawyer saying, we have a cease and desist for the name of your wine because someone's already using it. So you got to change the name. And he's panicking because I think at that point in time, it was like there were a lot of orders going out, and maybe he had like a day, like 24 hours to figure out a new name. So he's at a trade show, and at the same time that he's finding this out, a mother and a daughter that were vendors at the trade show, some natural food trade show, were listening to this, and they spoke Spanish and said, we actually have an idea for your wine, because they had just been talking about this clean canned wine, and they suggested Besa mi Vino. And he said, that sounds great to me. I'm going to go with it. And so they went with that name after a suggestion from a mother-daughter duo who spoke Spanish and really liked that. So I thought that was a great story of like a panic of something, really bad happening. And then all of a sudden the problem was randomly solved by 2 strangers.
It's funny how that seems to work. So I want to show this box that you sent me. And actually I'll include this other piece too. So it's a gift box. That's right. It includes this for our viewers. This is a podcast, so most people won't see it, but there's a little spin here sign. It also came with an empty bottle, which my wife and I were like, why the hell do we have an empty bottle? Until we read up a little bit more about the story behind the box. It is basically, well, why don't you tell a story about the box? And now kiss my wine now makes sense, by the way.
Yeah. So
with the box.
so clean you could kiss it. That's the idea. and again, we can go into more of the nitty gritty details of this decision and this pivot for me. But essentially, I took over this company as the new CEO last year. It's been around since 2019. And in end of 2020, I became their new CEO. Now, my intentions for the brand were to do a couple of things. Number one was to re-engage the community. And number two was to relaunch the brand. So actually, as you can see, like we have a new red wine. We didn't have that before. This actually looks a lot different than what it used to. And we haven't even launched this officially yet. It launches in June. But the box is our way to engage with our community. So what it is, it's actually a drinking game, a proprietary drinking game that I created called Spin the Besa. And the idea is that it's a spin on spin the bottle, the old game where you're sitting around with friends at a party or whatever when you're a teenager, and you spin the bottle. And
I think I played it with a girl in a banana suit one time in high school.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? And so you spin the bottle, obviously it points to someone and you kiss them. And so we thought it was a really cute idea to allude to the wine bottle and Besa mi Vino, meaning kiss my wine, to create a drinking game where the bottle was included. So you spin the bottle and then you pick a card. Whoever it lands on, that person picks the card and they read it out loud. And there's a lot of truth, dare, and challenge questions. So it's a very interactive drinking game. Exactly. Yeah. So there's about 200 cards in there. And the reason we created this was to essentially tell our community, again, specifically in Los Angeles, but across California where we're distributed, to be like, hey, we're back. We've got new things coming. And we also wanted to reintroduce kind of the purpose and the whole idea behind the brand, which was to get people together.
So I now understand the empty bottle. It's now like we can spin the bottle or spin the Besa, as you said. And I've got 4 different varieties here. I've got red wine, as you showed. We've got a white wine, and there's 2 rosés, which is my wife's favorite. So that's perfect. But how about we do a little sampling on the air? Is that cool?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Which one?
I don't know if that's legal with the Texas liquor laws, but we'll give it a shot. So here we go. Cheers.
Cheers. Get mine open. Cheers.
Cheers.
So Kurt, have you ever had red wine out of a can before?
I have not had red wine out of a can, and it's actually pretty damn good. And what I can tell already is I don't taste the sulfites and stuff that you're talking about. So I can see already it's very clean.
Yeah, very clean. We're really excited about this blend. It's made with organic Grenache and Pinot Noir. And we thought it was actually really perfect and suitable for summer because it's actually quite light and refreshing, which is kind of rare for reds, but we're excited about this one.
I like it. Thank you very much. And tell everybody where they can go get it, or can they order it from online if they're not in California?
Absolutely. So drinkbesa.com is where you can order online.
BESA?
drinkbesa.com, drinkbesa.com. We ship to 42 states. There's just a few states that we don't ship to. And then we're also distributed in about 150 or so retailers across California.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the drinking game. I hope to play it maybe this weekend. So here's my next. Let's shift gears. I sent you, we did a little quid pro quo. Can you show people what I sent you?
Absolutely. Got the book right here.
I sent a copy of my book, Who's Your Mike? And so it's the subtitle is A No Bullshit Guide to the People You'll Meet on Your Entrepreneurial Journey. Each chapter is a different character or archetype that you're going to meet on your journey. Can you share with us who is your favorite character so far and why?
Well, to be honest with you, I just got the book. I haven't gotten through it all. But I'll be honest with you, Kurt. When I started reading it, Who's Your Mike, right? The first thing that I actually kind of thought that kind of scared me was, am I my own Mike? Am I the one who's going to not be able to move up to the next level with this company? And, I think we briefly spoke about this before, but you do mention, that in that case, that might be the case for you, right? And if so, there are solutions to deal with that. But I would say that the bookkeeper turned CFO, I think that's the first one that we talk about, right?
So the one that resonates most with you is actually Mike himself.
Yeah. Which is a little bit scary because when I was reading it, I was like, going through all of the leadership and the managerial skills that this person needed to have, that all of a sudden it's so funny because it's like, why does this person seem to be able to handle so much? And then when things seem to supposedly get easier, where the company has more resources, there's more people around to help, why does it seem like that person can't handle it? And that resonated a lot with me. And to be honest with you, it was a little bit scary.
Well, I know you're working with a coach, so I know that's a big part of what I would encourage most entrepreneurs to do, and for their team. So the Mike is your bookkeeper friend who basically turns into your accountant, your controller, and ultimately your CFO. And they're in over their heads at this point. They're trying to navigate much deeper waters than you've been in before, and they don't really want to tell you they're over their heads. They're working 100 hours a week. They're just swirling. And so the question is, who's your Mike? Every entrepreneur either has had one, will have one, or currently has a Mike. A funny story, my sister read that book, or she started the book. She read the first chapter. She started crying because she said, Kurt, I'm Mike.
Oh, yeah.
So every chapter is a different character like that. So it's a lot of fun. So thank you for playing along. So Tori, we've reached the point in the show where we talk about our unlocking moves. And unlocking moves is really it's that key decision point or inflection point along our journey that changes our trajectory. And maybe there's 1, 2, 3. I don't know how many there might be, but everybody has one. I'd love to hear from you. What are 1 or 2 for you?
I think the biggest one and the most relevant one, Kurt, recently has been the decision to become the CEO of technically someone else's company. So, of course, I had my own company, Drink Light, and started that in 2019. And then in 2022, I actually stopped raising money for Drink Light at a lot of my investors' surprise, and decided to come into another company as the new CEO. The company was pretty much, it had a little bit more traction than Drink Light. So it was a few steps ahead. We had just secured funding with Besa. And so it was literally just steps ahead of where I was. And a lot of people were very surprised and very shocked when all of a sudden I said, by the way, I'm putting Drink Light on pause and I'm going to be the new CEO of a wine company. And to be honest with you, it was a very scary decision for myself. But looking back, almost coming around about a year to that decision or when I started, thinking about the decision, it was about a year ago. I know I made the right one. I know I made the right call.
I love it. And the courage to be able to put that on hold, I'm sure was monumental. And then being able to follow through on it. A lot of people don't do that. So kudos to you for seeing the need and the opportunity and then seizing it. Congrats.
Thank you.
So Tori, are there any examples of characters from Who's Your Mike that you've seen that you'd like to talk about, or maybe any that you want to add? Like every time I talk to somebody, you forgot about the personal problem Polly or whatever.
That's a good question. I think that in my experience, and I haven't finished the book, so you may have covered this person, but it's the person who was kind of your entry level. I had a lot of interns at Drink Light, and I still do. And they're kind of the do it all for you, get it done, really scrappy and resourceful. And I think this kind of goes along with a lot of the characters of the book and a lot of their qualities. But then all of a sudden you ask them to focus on one specific thing and they can't quite do it. And so it's kind of the person who, like I said, is the do it all for you dolly that now needs direction. And it's almost it's kind of scary because you don't know what pocket to quite put them in, and neither do they. And so I know that, again, resonates with a couple of the characters in here, right? But that's the character that, I'm kind of dealing with right now, because I've got a lot of great entry-level hustlers who now need to find their niche.
So that's very, very prevalent in this space. I love the name "Do It All for You, Dolly." Maybe you like it better than "Bounce Around Betty," which is the name I came up with.
There you go.
The idea that early on you need generalists who can do anything and everything, and sometimes they're your marketing person to go solve your SEO problem, and then the next day they're over your production facility, talking to production folks. So yeah, Bounce Around Betty is one of the characters, but that's a very common trait of early stage companies. And as you scale and try to go to the quote next level, we need to start either having them move in one direction, or you bring in professionals who've done it before with those types of roles. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and that's a really difficult decision too, is Absolutely. Which you address in the book, is how and when you make that difficult decision, right? Because it's someone's life who's put in probably a lot of effort into your business, your baby. that meant a lot at a certain point in time. And now it's like, well, do we put the effort in to have this person continue to grow with us? Is that best for both of us? Or like you said, do you move on and you hire someone else?
There's really no clear answer, and the answer is different for everybody. And this is where, again, you take in the advice and counsel and the facts and make your own decision. And sometimes you can put them in one department that works. Maybe you can bring in a coach to help them with their own career. Sometimes remove them for the organization is needed. What I always encourage entrepreneurs to do is if my entire team is doing this for the first time, we're going to learn a lot of lessons the hard way. So I need to find one or two key areas where I can bring in some been there, done that type of folks to help us get there faster.
Absolutely. And I think there's another thing that you may touch on as well, which is that transition between the core team, right? Because that core team or the original team, if you take one or two of those people out, that changes the dynamic. And then you bring in another person in that can really affect the culture. And I'm experiencing that a little bit now, where I know some folks are noticing, okay, there's some changes, there's some new people coming in. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the person that I was just working with that was doing that person's job? And so that's a lot for a CEO to manage on top of everything that they already have to do day to day.
No question. It is absolutely lonely at the top. And I'm glad you have a coach and that you have other people that you lean on for counsel. So.
Yeah, I sure do.
So, Tori, I like to consider myself the listener's advocate, where if I'm listening to this podcast, what would I want to ask Tori? And here's what I came up with. I know that you've got a passion for females in leadership and entrepreneurship. What advice would you give to young aspiring girls and females to help them in their own journey?
That's a great question. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is find a female entrepreneur who is willing to allow you to either work for them or shadow them. And if you can, do this with a couple of people, because even if you're working for free, if you're volunteering, if you're shadowing, that's going to give you a lot of insight. It's going to give you insight into the different types of entrepreneurs. It's going to give you insight into the different types of businesses, both in industry and size. And so, but I think it's important, because I think it's also important for women to see other women in those positions. I didn't really have a chance to spend time around female leadership. And so what I'm doing in my business now is bringing in a lot of young women who are basically looking for internships, entry-level jobs, even just shadowing, mentoring, and that sort of thing. And typically we'll find a way to integrate them so that they can spend 3 to 6 months with me or more. Some of my interns who are now becoming full-time employees have been with me for over 3 years. They come in and they either leave knowing something new about themselves, or stay and get really good at something, or they get closer to their own entrepreneurial journey. So I think it's important, no matter who you are, to basically, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to spend time with other entrepreneurs. And I think what's really important, Kurt, is that I spent a lot of time with seasoned entrepreneurs who had been successful before I was even born, which is great in its own regard, and you should have those people around. But I think in order to stay relevant and in order to have a better understanding and to honestly stay sharp, you need to find entrepreneurs that are really close to you in age, because I think they're going to be the ones solving the world's today's problems. And that's going to be most helpful for you as you go on to your own entrepreneurial journey.
I like it. Hang out with entrepreneurs, people that you aspire to be, and hang out with other folks in a similar space so you can share stories and band up and work together.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of my interns who has been with me since the beginning of Drink Light, now works for me part-time as a consultant at Besa. She was a barista, and she just messaged me over LinkedIn saying, I don't have much experience. I don't really have an education, but I'm interested in what you're doing, and I'm interested in entrepreneurship, and I want to learn. How can we work together? I'm interested in marketing. So here's a one-pager of all the marketing ideas I have for you that I'm willing to execute for free for this many hours per week. And she basically put together her own internship, which kind of launched our intern program for undergraduates. But this woman was incredible. She was very entrepreneurial in just the way she approached me and the way that she said, hey, I think I can learn from you. Just give me a chance to. And we've been together ever since.
Wow. That's a great inspirational story in and of itself. So this young lady sought out an entrepreneur that she aspired to be like, offered free consulting, free work so that she could get her foot in the door. That's a good, powerful lesson for folks as well. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
So I've got a trick question for you now. The question is, what is one question that people don't ask you that either you wish they would, or maybe you're glad they didn't? Obviously, besides the dancing banana.
Yeah. No, I would love more questions about the dancing banana. I'll be honest. I told you that was my favorite job. I don't think I'll top it. What's one question? I think that a question that is still taboo, even though, we've gotten so much better at it, is how's your mental health as an entrepreneur? Or how do you manage your physical and mental health as an entrepreneur? And there's so many different approaches to this. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies. It's kind of like health. And I started out my career in health. I studied nutrition science in my undergrad, and that's where I started my career. And it was always, the question was, what is healthy? How can I be healthier? Right. And so for entrepreneurs, I think the discussion around what does health look like for you? What does balance look like for you is always a real sticky question. And it's one that always leads to usually difficult conversations that either stick with that entrepreneur. But I think they're important questions that we should continue to have in the community.
And I love that you said that, Tori, how it's very timely. And for the last, frankly, 3 years, probably the last generation, it's been very timely, is asking people how they're doing and mean it. Ask the follow-up questions. Don't take fine for an answer. I think that's a powerful concept, is check on people's mental health. Thank you. Absolutely. So, Tori, where can we find more information about you or about Besa?
Well, I'm probably most accessible on LinkedIn. So if you Google me, I'm usually under Victoria Brodsky or Tori Brodsky. And then Besa, you can go to drinkbesa.com, or any of our Instagram or TikTok, videos accounts will be at drinkbesa as well.
Drinkbesa.com. Thank you so much. On that note, we're going to wrap this puppy up. Tori, please like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you consume your podcasts. And Tori Brodsky, thank you so much for joining me today. I love what you're bringing to the table.
Thanks so much, Kurt. Really appreciate it.
If you're an entrepreneur and you think you might have outgrown a member of your team, or maybe you've got a mic, as we talked about in Who's Your Mic, check out this quiz at who'syourmic.com/quiz. That's who'syourmic.com/quiz.